thanks for everyone showing up. My name is Derek Morton. I'm actually new to the area. You may have met me a couple times ago when I showed up, but I originally lived in New York City for 10 years. Before that, I'm native of Washington, D.C. The way I got into this was through indie rock, punk rock music. One day, after playing guitar, I noticed this crazy feedback sound going through my guitar amps. And I started going, well, that's kind of crazy. Let me go and play with my pedals, and then ended up finding out that modulating the feedback, modulating the delay, it was really cool. And then I had this little cheap Casio, and I said, let's just not worry about the guitar because I can do delay notes with the keyboard. And then sooner or later, I really got into electronic music, which I never thought I would be into because I was a rock star. I was a guitarist. Like, I wanted to just, I was coming from the punk rock background, and back then, other than like Devo, like who else played keyboards? So from there, I did a lot of different things because this was in the mid-90s, and you start really using the computers to do a lot of cool stuff, like recording your band. Reactor came out, which was a modular synthesizer and a computer. Got really into granular synthesis. You could take loops and do all kinds of stuff. And I just went full on to experimental music. Playing out shows, organizing events, doing weird things like not playing my guitar anymore, but just using the MIDI from it to trigger all my synthesizers. MIDI converter for my guitar. So then I was always a tinkerer. I built computers. And I said, why don't I start building my own instruments? And this is where we are today. I built this. This is not my design, but this is a kit that I highly customized by a guy named Peter Blasser. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of his work. He started a company called Ciat Lonbarde in Baltimore, and then he started several other lines of instruments. You can actually find his instruments at Synth Mall. The thing about Peter is that he likes building instruments that you really have to explore. There's really not a lot of normal documentation, or they don't react the way that you think they would react. And you'll see, I'm going to basically give you a little demonstration of this instrument and why this instrument has become really important to me. I ordered it online. I knew it was going to be a challenge. It took 2 weeks to solder. I've done a lot of soldering projects like building theremins and guitar pedals. This took a while, and what was really frustrating, but also enlightening, was there are certain parts of the circuit board that he had no specific instruction for other than use a fuzzy capacitor. And I know what a capacitor is, but his concept of fuzzy was it didn't have to be a specific value, and he kind of gave you a hint. So there are like 8 or 10 spots on here that you had no idea. Just put something in there and see how it worked, because you could always fix it later. So I built it. It actually ended up working, which is pretty cool, and then I started learning how to play this. Half of my friends who built these have sold them. The other half have really fallen in love, and there's a whole Facebook cult group that people just talk about these types of instruments. So it's you either hate it or you love it. So, and I'm not going to spend crazy amounts of time going into the philosophy of this. There's a lot of, but I want to just at least give you an idea of what this sounds like. The way I use it in a live performance is an expressive instrument. I generally don't go up on the stage by myself playing this. You'll find out why soon. It's a bunch of oscillators, if you're into synthesizers, that all modulate each other together based on how you connect this. There are internal mappings depending on certain values, so it's not a pure circuit design. If you ever heard of circuit bending, some people call it bent by design. This instrument is bent by design. Peter built it so that it's got a lot of idiosyncratic circuitry that's not straightforward. Like most synthesizers are built so that you could reproduce a sound the same way each time. This has a battery. If I stick a battery in it, changes the whole nature of the instrument. I usually plug it in because it gives it more juice. It's got a built-in speaker. How many keyboards have that? A few, but not many. Let's plug it in. And it's nice because you don't actually have to have a PA system to hear it, or you don't actually need alligator clips. And I've learned how to play this without alligator clips. Right now you don't hear anything, right? I just happen to know this is the speaker. very expressive, and it takes a little while to kind of get used to where you're, and I'm just touching things. It's very technical.
You're not bending them, you just touch by touching.
And it's using the impedance to my body.
Now, how do you know which
I don't
points
always.
do
I
everything?
know generally. So I really like improvisation. I like going on the stage without a net, and I like really working with what I'm hearing. And this is an ultimate thrill because people don't hear this type of music much, and they don't understand how I can control it. Sometimes I don't know how to control it, but it feels like I do.
Does it basically work like a theremin though?
No.
Really?
It's touch. Theremin, it's proximity. Theremin, it's using heterodyne frequency, like an antenna. This uses impedance, or it's electrical current to my body. I think Peter fell in love with this concept because he's not a typical engineering type of guy. He's actually I think he's like more Eastern. Like he feels like everything is connected, and it's important to have a tactile connection to your instrument. And he built a lot of string instruments because he likes that. But you don't need wires. You don't need any kind of artifice. You can actually sit there and play it. And you can hear, and he liked the rhythms too. Like watch. And you'll get these aleatoric rhythms. When I get something here, I'm just gonna get something going.
That was a great groove you had.
It's easier when it alligator clips, and I'll show you what I mean. Okay, so let's do the alligator clips. This becomes a lot more dramatic really quickly. So what I'm doing now is hooking up the speaker. Look at that. That gets annoying fast. I'm going to also do a circuit that basically drains this circuit into the other half of it, and you'll hear what happens. And this is where I can get better rhythms. And I know I'm not talking very technical. I'm just kind of giving you a flavor of how I'm expecting it to sound, because I've worked with this with a long time. So, turn it up. Almost sounds like radio buzz. Here we go, there's a rhythm. Slow it down. It's draining one part of the circuit and putting it to another, which probably has a capacitor that's bigger. So it's an oscillator. And I'm going to modulate more current to it. What I really like is taking this and putting it into an effects box or feeding it into some other type of synthesizer, and it just beefs up the sound. Because this, people just think sounds like a radio broken. But I've grown to really like the way it sounds, and with an acquired taste, it's a really fun instrument. Like here. And then I can just gently. Few more. I'll get some complex sounds and then we'll call it quits. This is sort of a patch bay. Very rough looking patch bay.
Clips on the same.
Yeah, so you'll see what will happen.
That's how you're multing is basically.
Yeah, it's like a mult, basically. That's really loud. So kind of circuit bend, you just take something and kind of experiment with. That's kind of cool. And I don't have every one of these memorized. That looks interesting. And when it gets really quiet, that's when special things start happening.
Yeah, I was thinking, I would like to hear this happening through the speakers as well. If you may.
Fun you should say.
That's cool.
You'll hear it in the speaker in a second. Let's make sure. doing this?
You unplug. Well, maybe.
No, it's on. I'm gonna put it up in a second. Just make sure you're not gonna hear anything else but this. Everything's off. Here we go. Oh, this is what's unplugged, right?
Yeah.
And I just need to get I'm patching the output into this, which is right here. Good. Speaking of pole,
Yeah.
so you get these kind of cool aleatoric rhythms. And what's fun is like, in my New York City crowds are really into experimental avant-garde music and just sit here really quietly in a nice kind of loft space, and they can look at this machine, and I can do very minimal stuff with this. And the harder I press, this might be grounding it too much. So you gotta ground a bit. So one of my modifications, I wanted to make this more playable. It didn't have any of these like cheap Radio Shack momentary buttons on here. I found, that's horrible, right? I found, that's kind of wild. Didn't expect that to happen. I can basically activate one of these momentary switches. It kills it, watch. So, I now have the ability to stab. I call it stab, that was terminology in my previous band, where it's a really dramatic attack. It's just like a hit, but watch what happens. Oh, that sucks. Picked the wrong one, didn't I? That's the right one. This is not my favorite stab button, but I'll fix it in a second. So now I'm getting a little stronger here. Almost sounds like a record player. So, noise box. So that's kind of the Fourses. What I wanted to do today is demonstrate Eurorack because this is my new love. It's one of those things where every week you could buy a new module or whatever your paycheck affords you, whether it's like a cheaper module or if you're feeling bold that week, you can buy a kit. It's like 60, 70 bucks and then spend the next 2 weeks putting together and troubleshooting. I don't know if anyone's been through that before. But when you build your module, you know really back and forth, you know how to fix it. So that's kind of fun. So over the last 3 years, I was afraid to take this step. I did. I have actually probably 50 more modules than this. This I set up today to work with this guy, meaning this guy is going to suggest current to one module, and from here, all the control voltage or, I don't know, control signal is going to get spread out through various types of modules. Some modules create sound, some modules modulate the signal, some modules, it's either making sound or modulating. I'm trying to think if there's anything. There's filters, there's all kinds of stuff, and I can go more in depth later. I want to just show you how this is going to interact, and then I'm going to pull all the cables out, and then we can do a little bit, something that's maybe a little bit easier to follow. But worked on this for the last 3 days. I think it's kind of fun. Now that you know what the Fourses sounds like, you're going to hear Fourses plus Eurorack, and you'll kind of hear how the augmentation happens. I mean, I'm trying to get him. Oh, it's because this guy's. Looking for a pulse. There's a pulse. I can see there's a pulse because it's detecting a pulse here. Let's see what happens when we do this. Suggesting to one of the modules to make that. It stopped. Because every time it gets a pulse, it's going to tell him, go ahead. There he goes. I'm going to go nuts. It gets really cool when it gets a transient, a pulse. That's not the right one. album, so I had to make it happen. Where's the square wave when you need one? Fuck. If I had 2 more cases of stuff, I'd have a square wave. Speed up one oscillator. Speed up all the oscillators. All right, that's this patch. What do you guys think?
That's great. So it's all being controlled through an envelope follower? Is that the?
Yes, so there's definitely a lot of modulation going on.
Sure, yeah. But the envelope follower is the trigger.
Correct. Anything that you can sort of see the relationship from here, it's going to be an envelope follower that emits a CV that tracks the audio threshold. So it's tracked, like if it gets really loud, the envelope goes high. If it gets lower, the envelope goes low. I actually don't think it goes below 0 voltage. Some synth nerds like to know that. I could get modules to basically take that envelope, because polarity is very important in modular synthesis. Not when you're first starting out, until you start figuring out why things don't work the way they should. But the I'm sending multiple, I'm taking the source and multing it, like separating the envelope to different modules, because I wanted it to affect different things at the same time. One other important thing is that it does send a gate out. So when it reaches a certain threshold, it emits a gate. That gate is like a timing signal, and I've got a clock divider, so I can kind of divide it up. I don't know if anyone does this or knows any of the terminology. I kind of just jumped right in, kind of gates, clocks, envelopes. But that's kind of like the overview. I would like to pull everything out and then maybe show some stuff that I like doing, and then you could actually hear one module, and I'll start layering stuff. And if anyone wants, and I would like people to collaborate and like make suggestions or comment on what's happening, and then what I'll do is I'll take your feedback and maybe tell you kind of what my thinking is, because I'm kind of curious if we can make something that's not crazy, but something that's a little bit more controllable. This I've only practiced like for a couple days, so I'm still a little, there's lots of cables. Lots of things going on. I didn't quite have a handle on it, but I thought some of it was pretty fun. And what I found is I used to just take the recordings and cut it up and stick it into different recordings. Now I enjoy the entire process. I enjoyed all the warts and all the mistakes. If I keep listening to it, stuff I didn't like before starts to sound, oh, that's amazing. I hated it when it came out that way, but now it's amazing.
Yeah.
So. Any questions of what I've done so far?
I mean, probably 100 questions.
Yeah.
But they all have to do with.
Why? How many drugs have you taken?
No, it all has to do, I think, with what the patches are.
What I may want to do, I mean, it's funny because when people do these YouTube videos, which is a great source of learning about modular, if you're interested, if it wets your whistle, there are certain people that do a really good job of starting simple and then going up to complexity. Or you can just watch these huge systems with a bunch of blinking lights create these complicated drum rhythms, and it's sometimes you can just sit there and space out to them. Richard Devine comes to mind as one of these guys if you do a search on the YouTube. He's just got walls of it, and it starts to sound the same to me because he's just into a very specific drum sound, but I've started making YouTube videos, and I'm hoping that this will come out well, and the recording will come out well, and I can share after the fact. But this is one of my favorite parts. I'm just going to pull everything out. We're going to start from scratch. One of the ideas that I had is I want to show how cool it is where you can modulate parameters of a filter to shape a basic oscillator sound. And it's not just like techno music that you hear. some really cool stuff. And if anyone wants, if you guys want to come up and watch what I'm doing, that's cool. Maybe we'll just readjust the camera. But I'm going to turn this guy off for now, just to make more room, get him out of the mix. Does anyone have a favorite wave, oscillator, like a square, triangle, or sine? Should we start with a square?
Square is my favorite.
Square.
Actually, I like sine waves. They're the most boring.
Let's do a sine just for now, and then we can quickly change it. Okay. Do something basic here. I'm going to actually, no, we're fine. We're fine. We don't need to worry about that. Just going to turn that down so we don't kill ourselves with audio. So all I'm doing right now is taking the output of an oscillator and sticking it into the input of this mixer. And right now, you're probably not going to hear anything. Oh, barely. Yeah, I can hear it. This is the frequency knob. Can anyone tell? One of my favorite filters. So now that we know that works, that's pretty boring. I think I want to show that this guy, what this guy does to the sound, modifies. It's probably not going to be so exciting because it's a sine, but we'll give it a shot and see what it sounds like. And this is where I have to take my glasses off because I can't see. So I'm shaping the sine with the low pass filter. Wow, it's off completely. Because I don't want to constantly have to shape this. We can get another module to do that. You want another module. So let's do something with the frequency. So I'm going to make sure I plug it into the frequency CV1. And then I'm going to try to find a modulator. So this is called a VI LFO or LFO. It's voltage influenced low frequency oscillator. Most LFOs are influenced by voltage. This one is interesting, and I'm going to show you why.
Influence is different than actually controlled.
Yeah, you'll see it in a second. When I'm saying influence, you'll start to see I actually can control the oscillator or the LFO and make it shut off in ways that's not linear, or it's just weird. And Pittsburgh Modular did a better job explaining of what it's for, but when I bought it, I still didn't know what it was supposed to do. So I guess they didn't do a great job. And this is one of these unusual. So now it is cycling. It's just not a lot of. And maybe when I say influence, it's not receiving a lot of signal because I have an attenuator. It's like a volume control for how much of the voltage is influencing this knob, making the filter. So as I
It's influencing the filter.
influencing the frequency cutoff of the filter. So that starts to sound kind of cool. So I'm gonna speed it up just so it's more dramatic.
You're not changing the resonance on that also?
I'm not touching
sounds
it.
like-
I will turn it off. So I turn off the resonance, the cue, the peak of how high up before the drop. So
Right, that sounds, okay. Just
What
to
is
get the
this
resonance
shape
on.
that is spitting out?
that's a good question. If I had my scope, I would be able to show you. I have a feeling it's more of a, not a sine, but more of kind of a weird.
But is it controlled by these two?
One is variable. So if I did this is a pure triangle.
Okay.
This is variable based off the input of this. So this is.
So it's like a wave shaper built into
Yeah.
LFO.
So ICV is the influence of the CV, so I can influence this. But I want to put the resonance up because it's more dramatic. That nice peak.
I like the sound of that filter.
One of my favorite filters.
Yeah, it sounds great.
All right. So now we can also do things like this is low. but I want to show what happens when you influence this guy. So right now you don't hear anything, right? This is actually emitting another low frequency oscillator that will start to contribute to the way this thing behaves. The reason why you don't hear anything is because I have essentially the volume control, or how much of this signal is going into here through, it's just a pot, it's a volume control. Now watch when I start.
Wow.
So it's basically adding another pattern to the way this pattern generator or low frequency oscillator is behaving. And then, of course, if I want to tweak it a little bit,
It does it in a repetitive way.
yeah.
Not random.
It may not be in time with each other, it's all analog. I mean, we want to try something completely different, I could send it a different type of signal. Sometimes it's fun to see if this is musical. So I'm going to send it a gate. What will a gate do? I don't know. Doesn't seem to be doing much, but let me do this. Barely, but let's speed up the gate. It seems like it shuts it off automatically here.
It's probably all high voltage.
Yeah.
Probably not pulsing.
So that's okay, we don't have to listen to that. We should listen to this here. So, one other thing I want to try, this has another input, why not? It has a voltage input, which I think is going to actually change the waveform of this. See if that does anything. And I don't know, I haven't done this in a while, so let's see if this does anything. Of course, I just messed with the oscillator that was in here. Now I'm just trying to get something to happen. Alright, does anyone want to do anything to this? Any suggestions?
It's still sine wave.
Yeah, you want to switch it out? Let's try a different
switch it
one.
out
So
to,
this is a very pleasant wave.
A square wave or
What just happened?
Sweet.
We took out the sound source. What just happened? Why do we still hear
oh,
something?
is that your filter?
It's my filter. Because we have it still high res, so if I turn off the resonance, I just happen to know that you're generally not going to hear anything. But we can also,
I like that. I like the
that's the sound
yeah,
of
the
the
filter
resonance.
oscillators. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I think it's great.
Now this is a square wave. I love the sound of this filter.
Sounds fantastic.
It sounds like that ARP.
Sounds really good.
Maybe not like that ARP, because you have an ARP. But it sounds like the ARP.
Sounds great though. Okay, now you gotta modulate the pulse width.
You want me to modulate the what? Pulse
Pulse
width?
width. If you got a square,
Yeah, we
you
do
gotta-
have a
you
pulse width
gotta-
modulation.
You gotta modulate it. I think that's might actually be a law.
Okay, Tony, you need to tell me what to modulate it with.
So it looks like
Does
you're about
anyone
to
know what a pulse width is? I guess a lot of people do. Most of these people, everyone here is a synth nerd, so probably know that.
Tell us what a pulse width is anyway. Tell for the YouTube folk.
From the what?
For the YouTube folk. Explain what a pulse width is.
Oh, I don't know if I could right now. Hi, YouTube folk. So pulse width modulation is when you change the duty cycle or the actual, help me here, it's the actual, so if you see this, you're changing
I think of it
It's
as
the width.
the width of your
square.
pulse.
Yeah.
So the pulse can be, if you drew a line at the top, it can be really short, which you can barely hear and sounds buzzy, and then it gets longer, and to the point where you can't hear it all if you go all the way across. So let's see.
That's good. That's a good explanation.
Let's see what should we try. I'm curious what happens if I do this.
What's this?
This is just sending it control voltage. Doesn't seem to do too much.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Up in audio range. That's sweet.
Yeah, that's nice. Thank you. That's my mom.
So that's like barely hitting audio range, I think, right? Your other phone? Is that what's
Yeah.
happening?
That's kind of nice.
Great.
That's a lot of overtones.
So there's another thing nice about this filter is you can put another control source for the frequency. So you have multiple. And that was like, this is the first filter that I had bought that you could do this. So you have, where is my, there it is. Let's go center. So let's put another source. I don't have enough LFOs and stuff here.
Do you have anything that would trigger an envelope?
Yeah, I do. Good point. That's a very good point. We can just do a very slower. Why is this so fast? Let's try it. Oh, I'm watching the wrong light. So I'm just gonna send it a pulse. Come on, dude. Why is it not pulsing? Oh, because the envelope is too short. So now I can control.
So you have two LFOs now controlling the frequency on the filter.
Yeah, but I'm sending a envelope to the second input of the 4075 filter. So I'm sending an LFO but an envelope too. So I mean an LFO is an envelope, but it looks different. And this is the control of the envelope. I'm going to make the tail longer.
So this filter has two inputs that can be attenuated.
Correct. Two attenuators that are all, so it's two different fingers that I can control the frequency cutoff.
Mind if I give a little?
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to hear what that sounds like. That's a great bass sound.
We gotta turn that up. We should open the door. Houston, we have a problem.
That's a great bass sound.
Do you have enough stuff for kicking a snare over top of it?
Huh?
Do you have enough stuff for kicking a snare over top of it?
I didn't wall. I have a,
Get the noise generator.
we can actually do that, I think.
It'd be a killer bass sound.
Let's see if this works. I haven't used this in a while.
So it must be the resonance that's actually giving us the top end part of that.
Yeah,
Am
like
I
if
right?
I turn that
Yeah,
up,
so that's
it's kicking it a little bit.